Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Jaded Blossom's brand new Black Friday release. Along with a new release, Jaded Blossom also has their huge Black Friday sale. They only have 2 sales a year, so now is the time to grab all those fun goodies off your wish list. If you're ready to start shopping, I do have a link in the description box below. When you're done shopping, come on back to the video. I have a few cards to share using the Black Friday release. So here's a quick look at all of the items in the new release. We'll start with a stamp set called Gnome Card. This set is not available for individual purchase. It's free, but only if you purchase the entire release package. This is an adorable set with really fun sentiments, plus an image of a gnome. The rest of the items in the release are all available individually. We'll start with the stencil set. This is Mini Gnome Stencil, super cute design, and there are 3 layers in this stencil set. There's a new sentiment stamp set. It's called Gnomes for Sale. I'll pull the stamp set out of the bag, and this is how the stamps and dies all come, sealed in a Ziploc bag. This is a really fun set. We have Gnome Addicts Meet Here, Gnome Therapist, Beware of Gnomes, Gnome Grown, Gnome Crossing, and lots of other great sentiments. There's a new Gnome Face add-on set. This is number 2. So we have the background for a boy gnome with a very large bushy beard. And this gnome has the face, eyes, eyebrows, there's a new mustache, and even a new nose. It's a tiny nose instead of the traditional large gnome nose. And my cards in this video will feature every single item in the new release, including the freebie stamp set. We have a new Build-A-Booth add-on set. This one's called Gnome. We haven't had a Build-A-Booth set in a while, and this one is adorable. If you love gnomes, you'll love this set. It has the banner piece with 6 little gnomes, then the individual body, and you can either add a beard or braids. So you can do a boy or a girl gnome. There's no mustache for the boy, but there is a teeny tiny nose that will work for the girl or the boy. The next die set is a card mat die. This is called Rectangle Strip. So it cuts out the frame and 8 of these narrow strips. So you could use the frame or you could just use the individual strips. And they all have that fun faux stitch detail. This die is perfect for using up some of your leftover pattern paper or cardstock scraps. The next die is a new Embellishment Cluster. These have been super popular. We now have Christmas. So there are 4 different images and each of them come in 3 different sizes. And what's so nice about them, 6 pieces are all welded on one die, so you can quickly cut out a bunch of pieces. For my first card, I'll start off by assembling the new face add-on gnome number 2. I cut out that background piece from white cardstock. You can use any color since this will all be covered up. Using brown cardstock for the beard, and for the boys, I always start with the beard. Now I'll attach the hat, and I use some yellow tone-on-tone polka-dot paper from Sunny Studio. Next, I'll attach the face. You can see the curve at the top of the face lines up perfectly with the curve at the bottom of the hat. Now I'll add the mustache. I use the same brown cardstock color. I'll adhere it in place. You can see this gnome has a little bit of a chin showing. Next, I'll attach the nose right in the center of the mustache. And now I'll work on the eyes. For the main eyepiece, I cut these out from white cardstock, and for the eye, I use black cardstock. Now these are very small pieces, So after I add a small drop of Barely Art glue, I'll pick up those pieces using the wax tip end of Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. It's very helpful when you're dealing with teeny tiny die cuts. And some of Jaded Blossom's die sets have the tiniest die cuts. It's all worth it though once you assemble the fun images. So now I'll add the black in the center of the eye. You can see this gnome is really coming together, and the eyebrows are the perfect finishing touch. Very bushy eyebrows to go with his very bushy beard. So I'll just adhere both of the eyebrows above the eye, and then the final step is to add his feet. I will pop up the feet using foam dimension, and I pulled out Scrapbook.com's small foam squares in the 1mm thickness. The only thing left to add to the gnome are his hands. And Jaded Blossom has a variety of fun items you can have the gnome hold. I decided this gnome would hold a love letter. The envelope and tiny heart are from the Valentine Gnome add-on set. I'll attach his hands, putting one on the right and one on the left side of the envelope. Just putting a little bit of glue around the fingertips. Now I'll flip over this piece, pop it up using more of the small foam squares. Then I'll remove the release paper and add the envelope in front of the gnome. So there's my little gnome all finished. This is a really fun new design for the gnomes. Since it is Thanksgiving week and I'm a little short on time, I've already assembled the background and some of the images for this card. I've also stamped out the sentiment, and I stamped it on a stitched banner die cut, and I will have all of the products linked in the description box below. And this sentiment is from the new gnome card stamp set that's the freebie if you purchase the entire release. I did pop up the sentiment, and I also trimmed off the right side. This die actually has a banner on both sides. I'll also pop up the gnome using some thin black foam strips from Honeybee Stamps. And I'll be adding 3 mushrooms. I'll put the smallest mushroom on the very left-hand side. I'm not popping up that mushroom since it'll be slightly tucked behind the gnome. But for the other 2 mushrooms, I did put foam dimension just behind the top area of the mushroom. I'll put glue behind the stem and add the other 2 mushrooms on the right side of the card. For embellishments, I'm adding 5 holographic hearts, and I used the original Embellishment Cluster die set. I selected the 2 smaller sizes. I'll put 3 underneath the sentiment and 2 on the left side of the card. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. And I almost forgot to use the white gel pen. I'll add highlights on the 3 mushrooms, the gnome's hat, his feet, and also the small white circle in the center of his eye. As my daughter always tells me, you have to add the highlight, otherwise the gnome won't have a soul. And I do think the finished look does make a difference if you add that small highlight, although you need to be very careful using a white gel pen. This new gnome design is so funny. I think he has a very grumpy look. And if you arched his eyebrows, I think you could make him look angry as well. Now moving on to card design number 2. Again, I've already assembled most of the pieces. This card will be featuring one of the booths, and I'm using the new Gnome Build-A-Booth add-on set. So the little gnomes are super easy to assemble. The background piece, I used white cardstock. I decided his hat and clothing would be the same blue color. I attached a gray beard, and then final finishing touch is adhering a nose. If you like to use a variety of skin tones for your gnomes, Jaded Blossom does sell a skin tone paper pad. It's by P13, and I do have a link in the description box. For the background of my card, I used some Ombre pattern paper from Scrapbook.com. Added a narrow strip of green cardstock at the very bottom, just to look like grass. I've already assembled the booth and the girl gnome. And for this gnome, she'll be behind the booth, so I don't need to worry about giving her feet or shoes since it won't be visible. We'll put some double-sided adhesive tape on the back of the booth, attach the gnome, then I'll flip this piece over, put foam dimension on the back, and I'm using more black foam strips from Honeybee Stamps. These are a thin dimension, so they don't add a lot of extra bulk. And if you're interested in seeing how to assemble Jaded Blossom's booth, I will link a previous Jaded Blossom video at the end of this video. I've assembled it many times in different videos. Once I have good coverage on the back, I'll remove the release paper, and I'm not adding any foam behind the gnome since the gnome has several layers of cardstock. Now I'll attach the booth on the front of the card. Now it's time to decorate the booth, and this booth will have the sign Gnomes for Sale. I have foam dimension on the back. Before adhering it down, I'll first put a purple stitch circle die cut on the right side at the top of the booth. Then I'll attach the sign, and I'm putting the sign at an angle. I've already assembled the new gnome banner piece, and I alternated girl gnome and boy gnome all across. And I have 3 more gnomes, 2 girls and a boy. I'll be adding them on the sides of the booth. So this little girl gnome is selling lots of handmade gnomes in her booth. I'll put one of the individual girl gnomes on the right side, then one boy and girl gnome on the left side. I think I'll tuck this last girl gnome behind the boy gnome. The gnome couldn't decide on a price, so on her sign we have a dollar sign, and I'll also add a couple of the twinkle stars. And the twinkle star die is part of the original Embellishment Cluster die set. I'll also add the gnome's hands. I'll put glue behind the fingertips and attach the 2 hands in front of the girl gnome, making it look like she's gripping the top of the booth. Now I'll add the 3 tiny twinkle stars, and I cut these out from silver holographic cardstock, so they're super sparkly. So there is my finished card. I love the booths. They're so fun to decorate. After I finished recording, I did use a white gel pen and added a few highlights on the booth, the gnome, and the sign. So here's a look at a stencil fail that I did. There are 3 layers for the new gnome stencil, and you can see many of the gnomes didn't line up. For some reason, that top row was fine, but as we go further down, they're just not lining up correctly. So my recommendation is to start with the stencil layer that has the hearts and the hats. Then use the beard stencil layer, and then finally the nose. The reason I failed, I started with the beard and I didn't realize I had it backwards. So then when I added the hats, it wasn't all lining up correctly, and then adding the nose, I could really see that fail. So for my second attempt, I started with the heart hat stencil layer, then added the beard, and then finally the nose. And I have now marked my stencils in the lower corner. That way I know the correct side for each of the layers. And here's the card I created using the successful stencil background. The sentiment is from the new Gnomes for Sale stamp set, and I cut it out using one of their tag die sets. My next card features the new rectangle strip card matte die. I selected 2 pattern papers, a pink and teal tone-on-tone polka dot paper. For the frame, I used some white shimmer cardstock. Decided to go with a simple sentiment hello. Then I added some lovely pink and teal flowers and foliage around the sentiment. I love how this card turned out. Pink and teal look so pretty together, and I added lots of sparkly specialty cardstock pieces. For my final card, I used the Christmas Embellishment Cluster die set and cut out tons of the pieces. I used 4 different colors of cardstock, and these are included in Scrapbook.com's Jolly Smooth cardstock paper pad. I randomly glued all of those tiny die cut pieces on the background. Added the gingerbread image. This was released earlier this month. And for a sentiment, I have Sweet Christmas Wishes. I also used one of the gingerbread stamp faces. I love how he's licking his lips. Now here's another look at the 6 cards I made using Jaded Blossom's brand new Black Friday release. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, including the new release, I do have links in the description box below. Jaded Blossom never disappoints with their fun releases, and I love that their stamps, dies, and stencils are all made in the US. Whether you're a fan of gnomes or you're not a fan of gnomes, Jaded Blossom offers a wide variety of fun paper crafting items. And don't forget to check out Jaded Blossom's Black Friday sale. They only have 2 sales a year, so now is the time to grab those items off your wish list. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.